Hello, everybody. This is Andrew Olson, founder of Pan Africa Football, and we are continuing our series of discussions on the African Nations Championship, the CHAN, which starts on Saturday. And with me is our very special guest, who we're honored to have. We have Matar Mboj, well-known Gambian coach, who's coached the Gambia under-20 national team. He's also coached famous Gambian club Real, a transition coach at AC Horsens in Denmark. So, Matar, we're honored to have you again. And now we're going to be looking at Group B. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing this evening?
All good, Andrew. Thank you for the invitation.
Excellent. Pleasure to have you. So we got to get to every team, so we're going to get right into it. Look at Group B. Let's take kind of a surface look. You know, we have host Tanzania, who are going to begin the tournament on Saturday against Burkina Faso. So we have Tanzania, Madagascar, Mauritania, Burkina Faso, and then Central African Republic. This is a real interesting group, nations here in this group. What are your initial impressions when you look at this group?
Yeah, I think it's a manageable group for the host, one of the co-hosts, Tanzania, for sure. I think they're, for me, one of the favorites to actually get a ticket out of this group for sure. When I look at the quality they have, as well as the quality that the other teams present, I think the other matches are going to actually be quite tight and even, where I think the other teams will end up beating each other. So it'll be quite a tight race. Of course, the likes of Madagascar have the ability to upset the odds. Central African Republic as well. I think they beat Cameroon on the way to this tournament. You've also got Mauritania, who've been doing phenomenal work. We've talked previously about the work that Morocco are doing in terms of development, African football development, but Mauritania is another country that are doing phenomenal work in football development for sure. Burkina Faso has always produced talented players as well, and they have the quality to beat any team on their day, including the co-host Tanzania. But for me, I look at it, and if we say that in Group A, Kenya had a really tough draw, really got unlucky in terms of the teams they had, I think Tanzania will be a lot happier, and they'll feel that they'll be able to get out.
And you know, when you look at Tanzania, this is a team that has aspirations to not only compete in this tournament, they have aspirations to win this tournament and really have their moment in the African football scene, and to kind of carry the flag for East Africa. So when you mentioned this group being very manageable, do you think this is the type of situation where Tanzania can really build up that momentum to make a deep run, where they can build their confidence, sort out any issues they have in the team or tactically? Do you think this is a perfect opportunity for them to really get their engines revving in this tournament?
For sure. I do think so. They've got players from Young Africans and Simba, two of the most well-supported clubs in the whole of Africa. And for sure, they're going to be used to the pressure in terms of playing at the stadium, Benjamin Mkapa Stadium. They've been there countless times. They've been in the dressing rooms countless times. Those players probably know every inch on the grass, on the field out there. So it's going to be really important for them to settle as quickly as they can, to almost channel out the noise and concentrate on the task of the coach. It's also a coach who's taken the team to the next AFCON in Morocco, Hamid Suleiman, who they nicknamed in Morocco, in fact. But he's just done a phenomenal job. And it was no surprise to me that they entrusted him with the CHAN team, because I don't think there's a better candidate out there in terms of taking this group of players forward. And I really think that they actually have the potential to get through to the semi-finals, in fact, not just get out of this group. Defensively, I look at it, they've got a strong defense, in contrast to some of the other teams that we've discussed previously. They've got a strong defensive core. They've got the chemistry. It's in their backyard. It's in their home country. They're going to be comfortable throughout the tournament, even if they have to play in Zanzibar, even if they have to go to play in Kenya or Uganda as well. They'll be very comfortable. So everything is there for them. They just need to keep their eye on the ball for the whole 90 minutes and concentrate, because One goal might not be enough. 2 goals may not be enough with some of these teams here. And I can tell you with the likes of Madagascar, Mauritania, Burkina Faso, Central African Republic, they've got the capabilities to turn a game on its head. So you may think that you're in complete control, that you're in cruise control, in fact, looking comfortable, and then they can just sucker punch you just out of nowhere. Those are the weapons they've got in terms of the players they have in their squads. In terms of the coaches also, they know that similar to Kenya in Group A, they know that there's all the pressure on the hosts. They know that, the opposition, and maybe they could use that to their advantage to almost silence the crowd a little bit, keep the opening game against Tanzania, Burkina Faso will be saying, look, if we can keep the Tanzanian fans quiet for 20 minutes, if we keep the score tight, if we can get into halftime with a draw or 0-0, then as the game goes on and the crowd gets more frustrated, then we'll have more opportunities. Yeah, so that's going to be the game plan, I think, for the majority of the teams when they play against these co-hosts, because it's going to be in front of packed stadiums. And the fervor and the craziness, if you like, that's going to come from the support, home support. The other teams will try to use it to their advantage to say, look, can we keep them quiet? Can we upset the odds and upset the party a little bit?
And you mentioned a defensive unit of the Taifa Stars. When we watch them play in World Cup qualifying and full internationals and Africa Cup of Nations, there's no issues with the defense when it comes to Tanzania. And basically, it's the same defense that we've seen at the last Africa Cup of Nations. You have the two Simba fullbacks, Shomari Kapambe, Mohamed Hussein. Then you have Dixon Job, who's the Young Africans defender. He is acclaimed maybe as one of the better defenders in the whole continent. And then Aishi Manula, of course, a very good goalkeeper on Simba. Do you think it's fair to say that Tanzania has the best defensive unit at this tournament?
I'd say so. I think it's definitely up there. Maybe depends which pairing the Moroccans will use, but they've also got some good players. But for sure, I know that Dixon Joe was looked at by some teams in England and the Premier League and the Skyway Championship for sure. And for them, that allows them to play a little bit more creatively. We talked about previously, you look at a team like DR Congo, who very expansive, lots of attacking flair, but defensively, there may be a few gaps for them to plug. The Tanzanians, they are well coached. They are very, very well coached. I remember watching them against Morocco. They eventually lost the game 2-0, but there were spells where they kept the Moroccans quiet. And for sure, they've taken the lessons from how the A-team has performed. They've been solid. They have quality on the attack. I know in the A-team, the likes of Bwana Samata has traditionally done very well. In this tournament, one of those strikers will have to step up because, as we said traditionally, you need a striker to score a minimum of 4 or 5 goals for you to get far in the tournament. And we're waiting to see who that's going to be. For sure, you've got Faisal Salom, who's been really talked about. I think he's been looked at as potentially one to move abroad. Clement Nzizi as well. Lots of creativity, lots of dynamism, but they need to be assertive. They're at home. They need to really take the game to their opponents and use the energy of the crowd. Get a goal early. Try to capitalize on maybe the nervousness or the hesitation from the opposition, because they'll be trying to find their feet in the stadium. They'll be going out onto the grass and looking around all the 4 corners of the stadium and saying, well, the Tanzanians, they've gone through this when it's Simba Young Africans. They've gone through it enough times playing for the national team. So that's going to be a big advantage for them.
And, I think that's really the ultimate question. Yeah, you mentioned is, the goals. Tanzanian supporters are not going to want their team to win 1-0 or maybe see them kind of play maybe some of the more defensive tactics that we've seen them play against Africa's top powers at major competitions. You mentioned Faisal Salum, excellent playmaker, and of course Clement Mzize, who's a player who's been linked with moves abroad. So my question to you is for Hamed Suleiman, how does this kind of change his tactical approach now that Tanzania are seen as a team that's a contender? How does this kind of change how you approach tactically how to attack and assert yourself on these teams that are perceived to be weaker than you?
I think they just have to be patient. I think we talked about teams coming to frustrate because they're the home opponent. They're the opponents who are playing, hosting a competition. So the pressure is going to be on them. They'll have the momentum. So the job for the opponents, just like if it's a typical away match, you're compact, mid to low block, and you try to keep the scores as low as possible for as long as possible. For sure, that's going to make sure the Tanzanians need to be more disciplined in terms of maybe the openings will not come in the first 10, 15, 20 minutes. It may come in the second half. They need to be able to control the game in a way where they don't lose the crowd. Yes, of course, it's great to be possession based and keep a lot of the ball, but they need to penetrate. They cannot afford to have a lot of sideways passes, a lot of backwards passes, because the crowd are not going to be wanting to see that. You've said it already. The team must be more adventurous. It needs to, now being at home, now having that defensive base. We talked about Dixon Job leading the line. If you've got a player like that at the back, you can afford to be a lot more cavalier when you have the ball. Hopefully they will come out. Hopefully they will go all guns blazing. But of course, they need to be patient in terms of if the openings don't come straight away, so they don't lose the crowd and they can stay on top of the opponent as well.
And yeah, you put it very well. You have to be methodical about it, because it's not as simple as, oh, let's throw more numbers forward. Let's increase the pressure. It's never that simple and straightforward when you have to assert yourself on a team. We see it so often in football when you say, oh, this team will probably win by 3 goals, and then we find out it's not so easy, and then the pressure continues to build on the team. And that's a whole nother factor, and that's what we're going to see with these opponents of Tanzania in Group B. Is that they're going to thrive. They're going to say to themselves, hey, the longer we keep it 0-0, the more pressure that's on them, the more openings that might, open up for us to exploit on the counter. And that leads us into the team we're going to discuss, Madagascar. The Berea were such a great and entertaining team to watch at the last Chan at the 2022 edition in Algeria. They got 3rd place. They really captivated fans in a tournament that's known for being defensively oriented. They played very attacking, very adventurous football. And they have the same coach this time around. They have Ramal Rocco Tandrabe. And, the squad looks substantially different from the 2022 team. But what do you remember from that team in Algeria that made them so unique compared to the other teams when we saw so many teams kind of play a guarded style of play?
No, for me, Roro, he's a very, very tactically astute coach. He was actually in charge of Madagascar when they played the Gambia A team on a couple of occasions. It was a 1-1 draw, and then Gambia won the second game. We won the second game 1-0. And for sure, you could see that he built a strong team. And for me, when you look at the last Chan, the characteristic of the team was the counterattack. So it was mid to low block, very compact, very organized, minimal distances between players. And when they pressed on the triggers, and they were all able to go as a unit. And they caused teams so many problems in that aspect. And for sure, that's going to be another blueprint that he will use in this tournament, because he will say to himself, this was the tactic that worked last time out. Let's have a look and see whether this group of players can execute. And I'm sure game to game, they'll make refinements, adjustments, because we repeat what we talked about in the first Group A analysis, that this Madagascar team, we talked about the pressing. They have to manage their squad in 4 group games as opposed to 3 last time out. So that's also something that adds to the mix in terms of now Roro will have another game in the group stage, but that means it's going to be a lot more demanding in terms of trying to manage the squad.
And you make a great point that sometimes when teams score a lot of goals, it's not necessarily because they're, pressing or they're moving numbers high. Sometimes it's really that tactical pressing when you kind of draw teams in and then you're able to have such a lethal counterattack. That was really the defining trait of Madagascar at the last tournament, is that they would pounce, they'd win the ball, and they'd be out on the wings, out in these open spaces. It was really sort of a tactical masterpiece, I would say, from Roro. And I'm really excited to see, what kind of tricks he has up his sleeve, because it's going to be different this time. There's going to be a bit of a scouting report. Teams are going to, I feel like everybody was caught by surprise by this Malagasy team. And this time around, they're a known quantity. But, the squad's different. So maybe he has some tricks up his sleeve. I'll be really interested to see it. But, one constant from that team is he has the playmaker, who's known as Dax, Alohasina Andrianar Manana. I'm sure I didn't say his name right, but
I'm going to stick with Dax.
Yeah, we'll go with Dax for this purpose. But, a player who has a real pedigree. He's played at Kaiser Chiefs. He's played in South Africa. He really is a clever player who, he's not going to run around all the time, but he makes that incisive pass, and he's going to have some players who are going to make runs around him to kind of create those opportunities for him. How important is it to a team to have this sort of veteran playmaker, when you have a lot of, I guess, soldiers, so to say, to put in the hard work, and then you have a player like him who can make that energy and make those runs into fruition? How valuable is it for a coach to have a player like Dax?
Extremely valuable. And he's a player where no matter how much you try to keep him quiet, it's impossible to keep him quiet for 90 minutes. It's impossible. He will always find an opening. He will always be able to drop a shoulder, change direction, just be so creative in order to move away from his opponents. I'm sure other teams will have a game plan in terms of, if we keep Dax quiet, then we'll be able to cause problems for Madagascar. That's going to open up space for some of his teammates. But as I said, it's impossible to keep him quiet. And it's just so refreshing as a coach to have a player who you can rely on, who listen, let's try to keep him on the field for as long as possible. Let's make sure that during the week, if he has a knock, let's try to keep him fresh. Let him stay away for training, because he's so valuable to the team. And that as the game goes on, he has the skills to unlock any defense. And he just needs a half space. He just needs just an inch, and he's going to be able to take that momentum forward. And for sure, he is the talisman of the team. He will be the ones that the others will be looking for the inspiration and to drive the team. And I'm sure that he's also going to be able to deliver in the games that we're going to see.
Yeah, it's certainly a real team to watch. It'll be really interesting to see if they can follow up on that success, because they were a captivating team in a tournament that's, sometimes it can be a bit of a slog with teams kind of playing not to lose. They were really refreshing to see, and they have an opportunity in this group. Since we mentioned that Tanzania, it's really kind of opened up for them. It's also setting the stage for a team like Madagascar to challenge. And it's interesting moving on to Mauritania. You highlighted just the efforts that have been made off the pitch with the federation. They've had FIFA come and visit recently. They've put so much into their league. You can see it. The league's more accessible now. What and now their national team is performing better as well. What similar to our discussion about Morocco in Group A, what sort of improvements have you seen with the Mauritanian Federation that's kind of created this, that's kind of separated them from other African federations in terms of preparing their team for success?
No, great question, because Mauritania are really an example for other African countries, for other African federations in terms of how it should be done. They've set up their national football center, and they're actually one of the the first African country to have a FIFA talent academy. So they're really, really working on bringing the best talented players at grassroots level to elite youth, and eventually having that pipeline of talent. They've got a philosophy in place. They've tried to look at the Spanish way of playing, which is why they brought in a Spanish technical director and a Spanish head coach. So they're trying to play the right way in terms of playing through the thirds, having that ability for players to press. And by and large, it's been working for them. They didn't make this coming AFCON, which was a big disappointment and a big setback for the federation. But their momentum has been like a train. It just hasn't been able to stop, even with the misqualification of AFCON. the team has bounced back, the Confederation has bounced back, and the Chan team is there again against the odds once again for sure. But they've proven themselves. FC Nouadhibou competes in the highest level of in the CAF competitions. If it's not the Champions League, they compete in the Confederation Cup. And all these players, they will eventually have opportunities. And Mauritania is a great success story, as I said, of how lesser known federations, because as a Gambian, I was told stories about how we would often beat Mauritania 6-0 and they will be losing games by that margin. Not anymore. And I think they've got that defensive structure, which is what the Spanish coach has brought in terms of that pragmatism. Of course, they want to try to play in that Spanish style, but I guess the tiki-taka way if you want. But he's brought a defensive solidity. They don't concede a lot of goals. And I think that's going to be their key. Just in terms of, we talk about Madagascar, it's going to be maybe a similar style of play in terms of being very organized out of possession, but then being really ruthless and clever on the counter-attack. And I think that's where they can make the difference in this group.
And you mentioned the coach, Aritz Lopez Garay. One of the standout things about Mauritania I noticed was, how well they played under, Amir Abdou. And, it's kind of a similar story with the Spanish coach, Lopez Garay. He coached FC Nouadhibou. He also coached the under-20 team of Mauritania. It seems like both of these coaches are fully in the system. They're fully invested. They know the players very well. So often when we see a national team want to improve their results, they pretty much throw some money at a foreign coach and say, please help us, save us. It seems like Mauritania has really figured out how to do that. And what do you see with this coach, Lopez Garay? Do you see similarities to Amir Abdou? And do you think he can replicate the chemistry that we saw with this team last time in the 2022 Chan? Do you think he's a capable successor to this?
Yeah, and you make a great point in terms of the succession planning and in terms of the Mauritanian FA relying on coaches who have been on the ground, who know the terrain, who understand the mentality and the psyche of Mauritanian players. I've got a soft spot for Amir Abdou because he's from Mauritania and his name is etched in their history books, and he's also a phenomenally talented coach. He brought his character and his passion. I was able to see some videos how he spoke to the team, and it was just raw and very emotional and passionate, and it was no wonder he got the good results that he did. Lopez Garay has taken over FC Nouadhibou, and then, as you said, took over the 20s. And then he's also now taking the Chan team. Traditionally, that's what Mauritania have done, I think, even since the time that Corentin Martins was in charge. So for sure, it's a policy that's worked for them, for Mauritania. I'm sure it's going to continue. And I like the comparison that you make that, these coaches have come through the system. So they've invested their time. The club has invested in that coach. They've gone through the system. So it's almost like a partnership. So the club has helped to prepare this national team coach for the demands of coaching at the national level. For sure, like you said, the norm is just throw a lot of money at a foreign coach and say, come and be the magic man and solve our problems straight away. But this is methodical. I'm not sure who the current coach of FC Nouadhibou is, but I'm sure he's already on the short list for the Mauritanian national team job if anything happens to Lopez Garay. And I think there's method to that. There's advantages for sure. Maybe if you look at the disadvantages in terms of somebody being embedded in the system, is that at what point do you start to bring the Spanish model that you want to bring into the tiki-taka that you know from Spain, and how much of it goes against your principles and your philosophy? Because for sure, Mauritania, they will not be able to play the tiki-taka system because they don't have the same players as Spain. They can play as close to or similar style as they can. I think the coach has been pragmatic enough to look at the squad and work on the strengths of the squad, and to really hone in on the fact that they have to be solid defensively. And then that's going to give them the platform to play the style of football that can be pleasing on the eye, that the Mauritanian public will want to see, that the Mauritanian FA will want to see as well. Because a big part of what they want to do in this tournament, I can say, is not necessarily about winning. It's more about developing players. And they feel that the best way to develop players is to play a system that allows players to be scouted, that allows players to be recognized and appreciated. And that's going to be the model for them for this tournament.
Looking on the pitch for Mauritania, at the 2022 Chan, they advanced to the next round, I believe, but they really had difficulty finding goals. They were more defensively oriented. And even, when you look at that 2022 team, they had some real generational players in the attack. They had Ameya Tanji, who's the all-time leading goal scorer in the Mauritanian top flight. He's in Libya now, I believe. You had Bassam, a true number 10, a real legend of Mauritanian football going back before they really started making this transition. My concern is I just don't see where the goals are going to come from for this Mauritania team. A strong defense can take you so far in this tournament, but now that they're not in a 3-team group like they were last time, they're in a 5-team group. How important is it for them to find a source of goals if they want to realistically finish in the top 2 in a 5-team group?
For sure, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there, because goals wins you games. And the big comparison in terms of, okay, maybe you can draw 2 games and then go through on goal difference if it's a 3-team group. But that's not going to be enough if it's a 5-team group, for sure. And Mauritania, traditionally, it's been difficult for them to find that top level striker. The likes of Bassam has been around. We've been on the receiving end of a last-minute winner from Bassam. They dribbled past a few players, and I've seen firsthand, literally, the quality that he has. I think he's still involved in the squad. I think he's still there, but for sure, maybe having less of an impact. But it's going to be difficult to see where the goals are going to come from. When you look at, we keep saying that teams that do well, they have that recognized goal scorer, and I don't see it in the Mauritania team. I think for sure, as we said, coaches solidified the team, made them difficult to beat. But then I don't know if they have the players who are going to be able to take away the chances that are going to be given to them, because all the matches in the group are going to be tight from what I can see. They're going to be close run, and I'm not sure if they've got the players, the ruthless players, who will be able to, let's say, have one chance in the whole game and put it away. I'm not sure the Mauritania team has that.
Well said. It'll be interesting to see that the defense will take you far in this tournament, but there's a point where you're going to have to find goals, whether it's set pieces or there's certainly some capable players there who can provide the moments of magic, but it's going to be a challenge, I think, for Lopez Garay. So, looking next at Burkina Faso, as somebody who's followed Burkinabe football very closely, they've come such a long way. They've always produced talent. And, now that pipeline of talent from Burkina Faso to Europe, we're seeing it just improve more and more every year. But when I look at this team, when I was researching this team, it seemed like there was a lot of doubt from Burkinabe supporters about the capabilities of this team. Maybe they felt like the team selection wasn't proper. Maybe the most worthy players aren't being selected for this team. Is this something that kind of creeps into the minds of the team? Are the players conscious of this sort of thing, or do they maybe notice that there's less enthusiasm from the supporters? Because that's what I'm hearing out of, pundits in the country and supporters of the football in the country.
Yes, it's going to be difficult because the players are aware. The players will be following. The coaches maybe will be able to switch off, but there will be members of the federation, the press officer. They will be aware of the doubt and the lack of belief in the team. I think the country, if we talk outside of football, is going through a renaissance at the moment, a little bit. And for sure, the psyche of the country has changed. So they don't want to be seen as underdogs. They don't want to be seen as going to tournaments to just compete. They now have this belief that we can compete with the best on the continent. We can compete with the best in the world. They've got ambitions to qualify for the next World Cup. Never mind AFCON, which they have done. So the mindset of the population has changed and put that pressure on the team to go out and perform. No doubt they are aware, the players. But I also feel that they're also talking amongst themselves and saying, look, let's go out there and represent our country to the best of our ability. Some will say, look, the fans are right. Let's go out there and try to win every match. Let's not go there as underdogs. Let's express ourselves. Let's show them what we're capable of. Let's show them that Burkina Faso has talented football players, that we are a talented country. So I think that national pride, if I was a coach in his shoes, I would use that to the team's advantage. Create that siege mentality. Oh, everyone's out to get us. But then for sure, the opportunity is play for your country, play for the flag, play for your pride, play for the citizens, play for because for sure, if they qualify for the next round, if they get to the semifinals, the country is going to be celebrating. They're going to be dancing in the street every single time there's a good result. So the opportunity is there for them for sure.
And you know something about this sort of transition from being, an unfancied team to, a team with expectations. We've seen that with the Gambia. 10, 20 years ago, nothing was expected. Now, all of a sudden, you have a couple good results at tournaments. Teams are scouting you. As a coach, how do you deal with these sorts of newfound expectations, and how do you forward that to the players without having it have too much pressure on them?
For sure, it's something to be mindful of, and I have an experience where we played Ghana on a couple of occasions. We beat them in the group stage, but then when we came to play them in semi-final, they didn't play like a typical Ghana team. They played low block, but they eventually got the result. I think, they won 1-0 from a set piece, from a direct free kick. And for sure, when I reflect back, players, we were used to having that underdog mentality. We were used to, we're playing Ghana, Morocco, Gambia is expected to lose. In this way, for sure, the Burkina Faso coach could use that to his advantage. Because at the end of it, in this competition, the likes of Madagascar, who've been there, have a long run, Mauritania, they will have expectations on themselves to also do well. When they're playing the host Tanzania in the opening game, Burkina Faso will have no pressure. So the coach's message should be, go out there, enjoy yourselves. It's the first game. There's another 3 to go. But it is a really important point that you make, that a lot of teams struggle to adapt to going from underdog, where, yes, you can go in, there's no pressure. Now, wait a minute, you're the favorites. You're supposed to win the competition. What do you mean win the competition? Yes, we want you to win. That brings the pressure. Some players will relish it and they'll roll their sleeves up and do more. But the players, if they're not ready and then don't expect it, it's going to be difficult for them. And for sure, there has to be some sort of control in terms of the media and how much hype they're hearing back home and how much of the expectation they can take. So the coach will have a big job in terms of quieting that noise. Because any positive results, as in Burkina Faso now, it's going to be front page news. People will be going out onto the streets to celebrate. That brings the pressure. But for sure, as we've said, it's national pride at stake. It's a big opportunity for them to show the best face of Burkina Faso, produce a quality team, produce quality results in this tournament. And then the world will also, Africa and then the world by extension will have a positive view of Burkina Faso as a country.
And I think that kind of is why you see this sort of maybe fans having dampened expectations, is now all of a sudden the pessimists come out of the woodwork, right? No, it's no longer bon chance. It's more like, why is this guy being picked? Why is it, oh my goodness, we're going the wrong direction. That's what it kind of creates, I think, is sort of that pessimism. And that's why maybe you see that from the supporters. But, the results really speak for themselves to show that this is a capable team. They played Morocco in 2 friendlies before this tournament. They beat Morocco in one of those friendlies. And, I mean, that says enough. That speaks volumes about what this team is capable of. They came back from 2 goals down to beat Ivory Coast. But this team is resilient. They've overcome the odds to get to this point. So, yeah, you absolutely can't count out Burkina Faso. So we'll see what happens with with that. Which brings us to a team that's a really unknown quantity that we were discussing. We were trying to figure out before this discussion. Central African Republic, another nation that's really just made incredible strides in African football. That's qualifying for the U20 Africa Cup of Nations. That's showing real progress in their domestic game. And this is the greatest sign yet. They took down the regional heavyweights, Cameroon. They stunned them. Yep. They went to Cameroon and they won 2-1. They advanced on away goals. This is an interesting team. I think that we're going to see it. Such an unknown quantity, but we can really see some things from this team and maybe a surprise. And this group is, an ideal group for them to make an impression. What do you think the expectations are for a team like Central African Republic, and how relaxing is it to kind of be an unknown like this at a tournament with this big a stage?
Yeah, I've come up against their coach before at the U20s. Picked up a comfortable 3-0 win, but I remember during the tournament, it was because it was the first time Central Africa had qualified, that there were just no expectations, and the fact that they got to the quarterfinals, knockouts, was already a victory, and that helped us in the match because I felt that. We felt after that they were already happy with what they had by reaching the quarterfinals. Now, in this instance where, like you said, the expectations are not going to be there. And realistically, it'll be difficult for them to get out of the group. So anything, a knockout place, a quarterfinal place in this instance is going to be a bonus for me. And the reason why I say that is that, for sure, Central African Republic have been on the rise. I actually believe that eventually they will qualify for the AFCON. I think they're one of the countries that have not qualified for the AFCON yet. It's just a matter of time before they do. I believe this team and this tournament is part of the story alongside their journey to that goal. I think that's what the ultimate aim is. I don't think that the way that the Chan team will fit is to try to get a base of those players to feed into the national team, because they don't traditionally have so many players playing abroad. So they want to expand that player pool. So I think, looking at the squad, that's the objective from what I can see. I don't think when I hear also the coach's comments, I don't hear so much about even the knockouts. It's just about playing with pride, lowering the expectations. But of course, they can spring a surprise. When you talk about the team that they had to beat to get through in terms of that Central African region, it's really tough to take out Cameroon, who has a stronger league than the Central African Republic, is a big task. And they find themselves here amongst the best on the continent. I think the coach, behind closed doors, whilst he said publicly that, okay, fine, we don't have expectations, I think behind closed doors, with his saying to the players, guys, go out there, enjoy yourselves. We're here now. We're Central African Republic. How many times do we have a national team at these competitions? The 20s have been there. Okay, the 17s are starting to get there. So here we are. Eventually, I really believe that they will qualify for the AFCON. It's just a matter of time. It's a question of when. And this Chan team, this project they're on, is on their way towards that. So I think they've got higher priorities. They've got bigger fish to fry in terms of aiming for the AFCON. And I think that will just take off the edge in terms of all the logistics, organization, the culture, in terms of what the Chan team is expected to do.
I'm eager to see what they do, because I think they'll have some real aspirations. Like you said, the public comments, you keep the pressure low, but when you're in the changing room, you're trying to motivate the players, you can make history. And that's always something that's going to give them an edge in this sort of competition. So I'm interested to see what they do, and they've already shown that they can go and upset some of the bigger teams on the continent with their shock of Cameroon. So this team clearly does have some belief in themselves. See what happens with them. So what we do at the end of every group discussion is we ask you to put your neck out there, Matar. You got 2 teams out of this 5. Who are you picking to go through?
Tanzania. That's one. And the second team, I just think that they're just going to be able to find that extra spirit, Burkina Faso. just in terms of what's going on in the country and how the social media and how the media will give them that energy and that force to perform. I really think that they'll be also wants to get out of the group. Madagascar have done it before, so it was difficult to not consider that. But I just think Burkina Faso has just the quality to upset them also.
And you know what? I'm going to be boring here. I'm going to agree with you. I think I think you're right. I think Mauritania and Madagascar very much have a fighting chance. But I'm such a believer in Burkinabe football. I think they've come a long way in their domestic league and just kind of producing higher and higher quality players. They've had so much success at the youth level, and I see a very strong defense with this Burkinabe selection. So I think we're going to see less and less goals in this group. I think it's really going to be hard fought. It's going to be very close. I think the opportunity, like you, I believe Tanzania are a near certainty to advance. I mean, I kind of stick my neck out saying that. Who knows what could happen? But yeah, this is going to be a real dogfight, this group, I think, to finish in the top two. But I would give Burkina Faso the slight edge. Matar, I appreciate your insights. I think we covered this group pretty well. I'm going to be fascinated to see how it plays out. Fortunately, it's a little easier to predict things than Group A, which could really go in any direction. So I'm really interested to see who you think is going to advance out of Group C and Group D, which we'll continue with in future discussions. So this has been a discussion of Group B. We were joined by Matar Mboj, Gambian coach, joining Pan-Africa Football for our discussion. We appreciate your time as always, Matar, and your wonderful insights. And we look forward to discussing more when it comes to Group C and Group D. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you for our discussions of Group C and Group D.